Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame Live presented by Garage Beer. It's beer tasting beer. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Well, for the second time in 2 years, the Eagles will travel, in 3 years, the Eagles will travel to Tampa for a wild card game against the NFC South champion Buccaneers. The last time the Eagles came in red hot, winners of 6 of their last 8 games in 2022, to claim the 7th seed before they got smacked up by Tom Brady in the 31-15 first-round loss. This time, the Eagles come into the game ice cold. They've lost 5 of their last 6 to end the regular season, but it's only Baker Mayfield who stands in the way, and the Eagles still are favorites in this game. Will it be a different outcome tonight? That is our job to figure it all out. I'm Geoff Mosher, alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Caplan, and joining us, as always, is former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant, and from NFL Films, our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell. Gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about over the next 2 hours, and I hope 2 hours is enough to cover all the great topics that we have here. It is very, very difficult to know what the Eagles coaches have focused on more this week: attacking Tampa Bay's deficiencies or getting their own deficiencies in order. It's been that kind of month for the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jason, as the only person on this panel who has played in the NFL in a regular season and playoff game, I have to ask you, you have this experience, right? I want to know, because you made the point in your show with Quentin Michael, Q&A podcast, that teams just can't snap their fingers, flip the switch, and all of a sudden rectify all their wrongs in 1 week. So what do you think? What do you imagine the messaging is this week in the NovaCare complex? Was it about getting the Eagles right, or was it about game planning against the Bucs? Because those could have conflicting themes.
No, I think that I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. But to make mention of what I said is this absolutely true. The NFL is a job where you're auditioning for, another job as far as coaches and players, and there's a lot of money at stake. So the idea that you can just turn it on and off when you want to it's asinine. It doesn't work like that in this league. You can't just manufacture a win next week and I can just play better. It just doesn't happen like that, because you have all the motivation currently to do, to succeed. People are getting paid tens of millions of dollars. You don't think that they don't want to win right now? Every time they step out there, yeah, they want to win. So I think at the NovaCare facility, there was a bunch of smoke and mirrors to the media this week saying, we can turn it on, in the playoffs. It don't work like that. You got to have a sustained success of just showing that you're constantly getting better. It's gradual. Nothing happens overnight. And I'll say this last part is that it's a mixture of trying to iron out their problems on defense and their problems on offense, getting on the same page. We've heard reports on Sirianni and Brian Johnson. We heard things about Patricia and Desai, and we also know about an injury thing. So there's a bunch. You plan for the Buccaneers, but at the same time, you got to fix a lot of things.
Yeah, Jay, you know what? I want to just piggyback on that. And I want to go back to 2009 team that you were on again, which sort of had its difficulties down the stretch, lost to Dallas pretty handily in the season finale in Dallas. Then you had to go fly back to Dallas the following week. And that team lost, I think, 24-0 in that game, or 24-7, something like that. Do you remember what that week was like, coming off already a rough season-ending finale and then having to go on the road and play the same exact team when all those problems were going on? People were wondering if it would be Donovan McNabb's last game, which it wound up being. Just when you have things swirling around like that, what's it like inside for the players?
Yeah, I remember that game because that's the year that Dallas beat us 3 times, actually. They beat us twice in the season. They beat us later on. And we couldn't figure out. They switched to a cover 4, and it was a little bit tricky. And they brought in Kim Hamlin that kind of played it a little tighter. And then they had Greg. I don't know if you remember the defensive tackle. They had a defensive tackle that made All Pro that year.
Ratliff?
That
Jay
ate
Ratliff.
our lunch.
Yeah, he was a good player. Jay Ratliff was a good player for a lot of years.
He ate our lunch that year, and that was his breakout year as being a Pro Bowler that year. He ate our lunch, so we had no answer for the defensive line pressure, and then we had no answer for the way they were playing cover 4. So, and we knew that Donovan couldn't figure that part out in that situation, and so in the playoffs, it was a tough. The first play, I think we had a all lightning or all thunder, which is all hitches. And he sailed one right into. Now he threw one right in the dirt to Jeremy Maclin first play. We were like, man, this one's gonna be a long day.
Wow, rough memory. Rough way to go.
Yeah, I remember that, because I remember him throwing a deep over to me and going right to the safety. I remember that. We knew that.
Can you name the other defensive tackle? A interesting name, Igor Olshansky. Remember him?
I remember him.
Yeah, I remember Ratliff, because Ratliff played out of his mind. I think he was that year. It was like, dude, this dude takes steroids or something. That's what we were thinking on our team.
If memory serves me right, Jay, he was like a 295-pound defensive tackle. He was an undersized nose tackle.
He was really quick.
Yeah, it was like that year that he just went to a whole different level. That year,
yeah. No doubt about it. All right. Well, Jay, Greg, Adam, we'll see if the Eagles have the answers tonight in their playoff game. Obviously, they've got more questions on things to figure out. They'll be without their top playmaker on offense this game. We'll get to that. And then there's this other element to discuss, the fact that the NovaCare complex, as Adam and I understand it, has been a tense environment lately for coaches, for management, and everybody involved in the organization. You're going to have to wonder if the Eagles can get out of their own way tonight. So a whole lot to discuss. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Share the show, like the show, whatever you can do to promote the show. We really appreciate it. So we're going to start off, as we always do, with this game and look at the bigger picture. And Adam, I want to start with what I just talked about, the atmosphere going on in the NovaCare complex this week, the last few weeks now, as the team gets prepared to play a playoff game that nobody saw coming 9 or 10 weeks ago, a road playoff game as a lower seed traveling to a higher seed. Tell us about the morale that you're hearing.
Well, I could tell from a practice standpoint, they practiced well over the weekend, spirited. Hurts didn't throw on Thursday. He just handed the ball off, and then he threw well in Friday's practice. I don't know if he was wearing the glove or not, but I know he was seen by the media wearing the glove on Thursday, but lots, very spirited, good energy. Now, how that manifests on the field, we'll have to see tonight. That you never know about that stuff. I've heard so many different stories about when coaches tell us that, or players tell us that, oh, we had a great practice and they get blown out. So you just don't know. But I wonder about the confidence of this team. That's the thing. A lot of chatter, a lot of not bickering, but a lot of guys speaking out of turn. There's a great piece on ESPN.com from our friend Tim McManus on the state of the team and questions about the offensive scheme, which, Jeff, you and I know from talking to people around the league who've watched Eagles tape. There's some serious questions about this offensive scheme and the play selection. Not just the play calling, but it's actually the play design that needs to be improved. So there are issues there that they're not going away. You know, you talked about the 09 team. When you have a collapse like this, Jeff, my thing is you really learn about a head coach in times like this. Andy Reid, before it got away from him in 2012, he was always seemingly able to get things back. This is the first major test for Nick Sirianni in particular, not just his staff, but him in particular, because he's in charge of the roster. He's in charge of the football team and how they perform. And this is going to tell us a lot tonight. If they get blown out, you got real questions about this guy's job security. Let's call it like it is. You cannot get blown out tonight. That you got to play a competitive game, then we'll see what happens. Yeah, certainly. And in, my own talkings with people who have either ties to the team or talk to people involved in the organization, what we're hearing is that there is a sense where there's tension going on. Tensions are running high all throughout the building, as it's been described to me is they're looking for this head coach and this coaching staff to have some answers. They haven't seen that over the last 6 weeks. The playoffs is a blank slate. Jason says it's hard to turn it around like flip a switch, and it may very well be difficult and impossible, and we'll see what happens. But as a head coach of an organization, Adam, you know that your bosses, your management expect you, when times are tough,
to be able to figure out a way to get the team behind you. Ironic, we saw that with Andy Reid many times. We even saw it with Doug his first 2 years after winning a Super Bowl, where the team rallied late. And then obviously Doug, and Jeffrey Lurie, they talked about their different visions for the team. That's what led to his being firing. That's what they said. So we'll have to see. I think that all eyes right now, Jason and Greg, are on Nick Sirianni. And does he have any answers for what has plagued this team for the last 6 weeks? And that's both offensively and defensively. That's the big question. And Jay, I mean, as a person who's been a player and an assistant coach with the Eagles, but you played on other teams, I'm sure you've seen situations where you've come across environments where it seemed like everybody's looking to the head coach to say, help us here. Figure this out. That's what you're paid to do. That's why you're here.
Well, here's the thing. I just think that you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a guy that has less experience, you can't expect him to act like he has experience, right? So therefore, you have Doug in that situation that's going through multiple battles that are able to rectify issues and come up with game plans and change up personnels and come up with better plays. And that comes with experience. But you hired a guy that was inexperienced, and therefore you're asking him to have a veteran-like attitude or a veteran, style, ability to adapt, and I don't think that's fair to him. Greg, what do you think about that, Greg?
I would agree with that 100%. All coaches have to start somewhere, and I would imagine young coaches go through learning curves just like young players do, Jay. I mean, that just stands to reason. That would be the case in any business, wouldn't it? I mean, you're not going to know all the answers or even probably consider all the answers when you're young and doing it relatively for the first time. I would have another question, which, Jay, you could certainly address, I would think, is what happens when you're so-called really good players who are counted on to play well and be sort of the driving force at whatever position you're speaking about, don't play well?
Well, you can't win. It's just.
I mean, is that on the coaching staff? I mean,
no. That's so. Here, let's break this down.
Yeah,
Greg, because you asked the question and I'm gonna answer it. We watched the game last night, the Chiefs and the Dolphins. I think everybody, pretty much in the country that was willing to go to Peacock to watched it. We ended up watching the game, and Patrick Mahomes plays with less this year. They're able to have more bodies around Travis Kelce, which therefore he's not producing the same, even though it's still great production for a tight end. He's not producing the same. Rashee Rice is his only other reliable weapon out there. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a liability. McCole Hartman is a liability. I question both of their toughness. Watson at times is a liability. There's a bunch of guys in the team besides Pacheco, Kelce, and Rashee Rice. Those are only dependable guys that you have on the team. And why am I making this point? You pay Patrick Mahomes all of that money to do more with less. Mm-hmm. You gave Jalen Hurts the same amount of money as Patrick Mahomes, and you're expecting Jalen Hurts to do more with more, and it's not happening. That has nothing to do with coaching. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Swift, all of these guys are paid pretty good money to be in this position. And guess what? If Patrick Mahomes had this talent, we would talk about them being by far the best team, one of the best teams in the NFL. And what I'm saying is that Jalen Hurts has to play better because that's who you paying the money to. And he should be able to play better with less, like Patrick Mahomes is doing. But he's not playing well with more, and that's a problem. And therefore, you're going to get coaches that get fired at the end of the year because the quarterback's not playing well.
Adam, I hear what Jay and Greg are saying, and I agree with them. I think we can point to individual players, Jalen Hurts and others, who have not played to the same level as the year before. But I guess I could counter and say, if you flipped Andy Reid with Nick Sirianni right now, are the Chiefs as good as exactly what they are, and the Eagles are exactly what they are? I'm not sure I would say yes. So I do think that there's an element, just based on my experience talking with people and covering the league, that when you have players not playing well, it's not always because their play dropped off, but if the league is catching up to certain things, then how do you counter? When we talk to people, and I'm not talking to people, they do wonder if the players are being put in the best position to succeed. It's not about a guy was open on this play or a guy's open on that play. It's okay, was he open because they wanted him to throw it there because they know what the confines of your offense are going to be and they can game plan around that. It's the lack of, as you guys have talked about, motion, shifting, anything to try to help your good players get out of their own slump. And that, Adam, would you say is consistent with some of the things you hear when you hear people talk objectively about the Eagles?
Yeah, you and I had a conversation, Geoff. I will clue everyone in. And I got a very good coach, a defensive coach, who said this is what the Eagles' offense looks like. Very disappointed with the scheme. Says they don't really help their players a lot. They don't scheme them open very well. He went over a lot of things somewhere over my head, but he goes, this is what it looks like. And he goes, it's not very good. It's very critical of the scheme. He said the players also have to execute better. But this guy, because he's given cut-ups to watch, to break down tape, and he said it's not for someone with the Bucs. It was someone who, before they knew who they were playing, said that Philly's offense is they've underachieved this season. Now, you could also look at what's happened to A.J. Brown the second half. Why are his numbers down? Why has Goddard been so inconsistent? Why has Hurts regressed? We all have seen it. It's a mixture of everything, Geoff. Let's be honest about it. The players underachieving. They need to play better. Coaching needs to be better. This is not just one side. Everybody's got a hand in this. This one, I don't want to say it's obvious. It just, we all see it. It can't be all coaching. It can't be all players. You can't just point the finger at the players all the time. What's the players' fault?
Right.
Well, we've heard consistently from personnel people and coaches from the other team and break the tape down. They go, what are they doing to help these players? You just talked about it, Geoff. This is true. People who work for other teams tell us this every week. I'm kind of sick of hearing about it because it's the same stuff.
Same stuff every week. And I'll throw this last thing in before we move on, because you know what? Whatever happens to the coaching, we'll all have a time to talk about that in the weeks and days to follow. But Adam just talked about the players and the coaches, and I think you have to throw management into the equation. We know that the Eagles aren't always the most patient franchise when things start to go awry. And I can only imagine, if I was Nick Sirianni right now, how I feel about multiple different reporters already using sources to speculate as my job security. So what kind of messaging is coming from top down below? We know the owner is very involved. We know the GM is involved. They have weekly meetings. So if you're the head coach and all of a sudden you're seeing your name and the word fired in reports, you kind of have to naturally wonder, well, where's that coming from? And to me, that can't be a very healthy environment days before you're about to coach in a big playoff game. So to me, it's a top to bottom thing. We'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about that in the days and weeks to come, but we have a game right now to break down. Unless anybody else wanted to get a last word in on that, I feel like we should just start breaking down the game now. Is that good?
Sure.
All right. Great. All right. Let's get to our injury report that is sponsored by Garage Beer. It's light beer like it used to be. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Well, the Eagles just cannot get to full strength this season. Most of their injuries have come on the defensive side, but this latest one really hurts their offense. 3-time Pro Bowl wide receiver A.J. Brown is out tonight because of a knee injury he sustained against the Giants in the season finale. There is a chance he'll be able to play the following weekend if the Eagles can advance past the Buccaneers tonight, but he definitely is going to miss his first game in 2 years as an Eagle. Now, I would imagine, and I'll throw this to you guys, that they're not just going to take Devontae Smith, who's back and healthy and expected to play tonight, and put him at the X spot. That is not normally what they would do. I would think you would see a combination of Julio Jones at the X, perhaps Quez Watkins there. I don't know. It obviously it's a major void for this team, as A.J. Brown may be one of the best, most physical press man beaters in the league. But Greg, how do you see the X spot being filled with the personnel that they have right now?
Good question. I don't know if, I have a great answer for that. You would think it'd be Julio Jones because he's certainly done that in his career. Certainly has the physical attributes to do that. Again, then you come down to what do you do from a formation standpoint? What do you do? How do you deploy your people? They knew early. I guarantee they knew early in the week that A.J. Brown was not going to play because I believe he has a grade 2 MCL sprain. Does he not? Normally, guys.
Well, if it's grade 2, he wouldn't be playing in the second week. That's closer to 4 weeks than 2.
But I think that's what I heard from someone involved, but maybe it's wrong. But the point is, we
don't know that he will be able to play next week, so you might be right, Greg.
Yeah.
So we'll
but
see.
They knew he was not going to play this week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, we're not at practice, so we don't know what they're doing, but there's many ways you can line up receivers. Jay can speak to this. Obviously there are X receivers, but you don't have to line up on every snap in a 3-by-1 set with an X receiver. They're not a 3-by-1 team anyway. So we'll see how that goes. So it could be any number of people. It could be different formation looks, different receiver distributions and locations. You can line up in a 1-by-3 with Goddard as the X2. He's more than capable of being that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jay, how do you see that? Go ahead.
Well, last week they were able to put Quez out there sometimes. Julio in certain plays. So there was a bunch of different guys out there, but I think they started with Quez last week. So we'll see if that's true. I'm talking about in nickel zebra situations. But I will say this is that when you know that you're limited with the player and you know that the game is on the line, you start using swap terms. And what swap is basically wherever the ball is designated to go, Devontae Smith has the veto power to go there. So he'll go where the ball is being targeted, the number one target. So even though he's a Z, he can go to X if that play calls for the target to go to X. So I'm pretty sure that he'll have the preeminence when it comes to seniority tonight when it comes to play calling.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree it's very difficult for the Eagles, though, to have to replace the person who finished 4th in the league in receiving yards this year and had a great year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if you flip it over to defense, Sidney Brown, we know he's out. He is, I don't think they placed him on injured reserve yet, but he is out with an ACL injury, so he will not be able to play. That has left the Eagles dangerously thin at safety with almost no depth behind Reed Blankenship and Kevin Byard. And oh, by the way, Blankenship was listed as questionable tonight after injuring his groin against the Giants. He did not practice all week. So if he cannot go or tries to go and comes out of the game, the next man up most likely, and Kevin Byard might have let this slip a little prematurely, would be Avonte Maddox, who took some reps at safety. He's played it before. He played it his rookie year, a couple of games for the Eagles when they had some injuries there. And then obviously they have Bradley Roby, who can play the slot. They're deeper at slot than they are at safety, but not a great situation right now, Adam, as far as depth is concerned. And I just want to bring this up. Some people will say we're beating a dead horse, but Adam, new audience, different new show, different show at least. But why the Eagles never seem to want to add a veteran safety to the practice squad weeks ago when they were already paper thin at the position is definitely something that it's curious because the organization's been pretty good in the past about having reinforcements available, but for whatever reason at this position, no workouts, no kicking tires, nothing.
Weird. Yeah. Look, you remember when Andy Reid would bring back Tim Houck I used to love when Andy would do that. He was the emergency guy. Call him up. He was on the street. They'd sign him out of the blue. Or Jeff Thomason, a tight end. People, old schoolers might remember that.
J.R. Reed.
Yep. Was he the safety?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Need a punt returner? We'll call up Reno. They always have safety valves. Yeah.
Or if he got out of TGI Fridays, you might remember that. But seriously, so what they did today, Jeff, is they elevated Tristan McCullum and Mekhi Garner. As you told us last year, once the playoffs start, there are no limits to elevation. So because Garner, if you recall, played some safety earlier this season. It doesn't seem, if you're going to elevate both these guys are going to play safety, it doesn't seem like it would bode well for Blankenship's availability tonight. Like you said, he didn't practice. So that to me doesn't sound great for him to be able to play, or even if he can play, that he could last. So this is interesting. So if Maddox is the safety tonight, then you'll see Bradley Roby be the full-time slot, and here we go. And Avonte Maddox, Jeff, it's been, 5 years now? 5 years? 5 years since he played safety. I don't know, maybe even longer than that.
No. It's not that long.
He was a rookie in 2018?
18, yeah.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So this would be 6 years, yeah. It's that long.
It's been that long.
Can't believe it. I know.
Here's the thing. I've always thought that Avonte Maddox would be a better free safety than would be a nickel. That's just my opinion. But that was just me.
Well,
and why is that, Jay?
Yeah.
Well, he has a lot of range, and a free safety, if you're that guy, you don't necessarily have to be the most physical. He likes to tackle, but he has a lot of range for a free safety, and I feel like he can get anywhere on the field, and he has those natural cover instincts, and I like him at nickel, but I'm always like, when I hear people say that he's one of the better nickels in the league, I kind of laugh and chuckle a little bit inside. He just doesn't get tested a bunch. He is aggressive toward the line of scrimmage, but it's kind of tough. Like, I don't know if he's gotten tested to be like, hey, he's the best nickel in the league.
Yeah, I don't think we can make there's Trent McDuffie now, right? And then there's a list where Devontae Maddox is not at that level. And obviously durability, as Coach Bill Parcells would say, would be your best ability, and he has not been durable. Now, to your point, the first game he played safety, and I think it was only one for the Eagles back
in London,
year.
Wasn't it?
It was against the Titans. It was in Tennessee. Mariota started that game. They won it in overtime, the Titans. But he did have an interception right before the halftime with a nice little run back. So
he gave up the game-winning touchdown on a zero blitz too. That
I forgot about that. He did. I think Tywan Taylor
against Corey Davis.
Corey Davis.
Oh, Tywan Taylor, Jeff.
Tywan Taylor caught a 3rd and 19 pass in overtime. That set up a touchdown to Corey Davis.
Picket fence. Was that the first picket fence game?
Yeah, we don't talk about those days anymore, Adam.
Yeah.
Defense. All right. All right. Well, as far as injuries, everyone else good to go, including quarterback Jalen Hurts. He dislocated his finger last week against the Giants, did miss some practice earlier in the week, but all indications, right, Adam, are that he came back and threw the ball fairly well as the weekend went on. So that's obviously a good sign.
Yeah, I'll be looking tonight, and the rain will go in and out tonight based on the latest forecast. I'll be interested to see if he's wearing a glove on his right hand, because he was seen with doing it in practice, and from what we understand, he threw the ball pretty well over the weekend. Maybe that gave some people some confidence or energy practice, but that's something we'll be looking for tonight once the game gets underway, how well the ball comes out of his hand.
Right. All right, let's switch to the Bucs. For the longest time, the Eagles would be the healthiest team, and then we'd spend like 20 minutes talking about all the injuries that the other team had to suffer. Well, now it's like completely reversed. The Bucs are one of the healthier teams in the playoffs. Now, obviously, their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, is banged up. He is nursing injuries to his ribs and his ankle, which are impacting his play, but he's definitely playing. But as far as injuries are concerned, so much healthier than when these teams met in week 3, when they didn't have Carlton Davis, they didn't have rookie defensive tackle Kalijah Cansey, and in the middle of the game, or pretty early in the game, they lost cornerback Jamel Dean. So right now, everybody else good to go. Tristan Wirfs was battling an illness earlier in the week, their left tackle, but he's good to go as well. Greg, I'll just ask you really quickly, from a tape standpoint, when you watch Baker Mayfield, can you tell that he had the ankle and ribs going on in the last game that he played? Does he look a little bit uncomfortable?
Oh, for sure. You saw that in the last game, particularly with the ankle.
Right.
There's no question about that. I mean, he's not necessarily a movement guy in a strict sense, but he does have to move around the pocket a little bit, and you could see that it was a little bit of a struggle. So again, we don't know how it'll be a week later. He certainly had the extra day, but for sure in the last game you saw that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that'll be a big theme for tonight. Let's get to the breakdown first. I want to remind everybody, with the playoffs here, NFL, we're watching games, we're watching tape. Nobody is sitting at home planning and making wonderful meals for their family. That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no wasting time at the grocery store, because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping is already done, and the perfect amount ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. Doesn't get more efficient than that. And HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. They've got a great selection: chicken, steak, seafood, vegetarian meals, anything you want. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles, all one word, for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles, one word, 50Eagles, for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, let's get into this matchup. 2 things we know tonight about this matchup between the Eagles and Bucs. 1, the Buccaneers are going to blitz. 2, the Eagles have to be better against the blitz. We know that Todd Bowles, who was the former Eagles defensive coordinator for a little bit there, is a notorious pressure cooker. Jalen Hurts, fellas, is going to get blitzed the second he sets foot on Dale Mabry Highway tonight. We know that. The Bucs are third in the NFL in blitz percentage, and when they met in week 3, they blitzed Jalen Hurts on 61% of his dropbacks. Jason, given how the Eagles have performed recently against pressure, especially last week against the Giants, I'm thinking Todd Bowles might think 61% is a little low for this matchup. He may want to dial it up even more. What do you think?
Well, with the lack of A.J. Brown and the inability of the Eagles to hurt people during the blitz, it just causes the defense coordinator to have less concerns and want to dial up more blitzes. You have to hurt the blitz in order to stop the blitz. Until the quarterback until the defense coordinator, Jalen Hurts gets out of the pocket and gains 25 yards on the blitz, or he hits a consistently like short passes or hits a big one, they're going to keep coming. So, and there's nothing that the Eagles have done offensively that will stop a defense coordinator from thinking twice about blitzing.
Interesting. Greg, I thought you and Clay Harbor did an excellent job on your last show, Inside the Tape, really explaining that when people say, where are the hot routes, that sometimes it gets to be a little bit of an overused request, that it's not just about hot routes. Why don't you explain that for the audience right now, what you saw?
Yeah, everybody just assumes that when a team blitzes, that automatically means it's hot. That's not necessarily the case. Don't forget that it all depends on the nature of a blitz and how the blitz is deployed to attack protections. That's what good coordinators do. Is they're attacking protections, they're also attacking the quarterback. So rarely does a team blitz where there's more rushers than there are blockers. Rarely does that happen. Now, when that does happen, obviously the quarterback has to get rid of the football. It's incumbent upon him to do that. But a larger percentage of the time, that is not the case. So it's not a matter of being hot. It's a matter of understanding where the pressure is coming from and how to protect against it. Now, Todd Bowles is a master. He attacks gaps really, really well. So what he does is he'll send 2 rushers, sometimes 3, into one gap. That's hard to deal with. So you have to be aware of that. Now, it's even teams, for instance, there are a lot of teams in the league, including the Eagles, by the way, and I think Jay could probably address this as well, where the center calls protections. Even great teams like the Niners, the center calls the protections, not Brock Purdy. But they always give the quarterback the ability to override that if he sees something that the center can't necessarily see, particularly when teams use safeties or blitz from distance. Because once the center, gets down, he can try to look up, but he's not necessarily going to see certain things. So it is incumbent upon Jalen Hurts tonight in particular, because we know that Antoine Winfield is a high level blitzer. He's got 6 sacks. He's one of the best blitzing safeties in the league. It's incumbent upon Jalen Hurts to totally understand fronts and pressures and understand what keys are there. He needs to understand that, because then he can get involved, if need be, in the protection call. And that's going to be absolutely essential tonight. It can't just be the center tonight. Jalen Hurts has to be aware and involved in that.
Question Jason, on just to help on blitzes and so forth. So we talked to a team that we asked, hey, what do you see here? How do they beat pressure? What kind of routes do they use? And the guy mentioned China. You familiar with that? I'm sure you are familiar with that. That's what the guy said. That's their one play that they'll use to help out. What do you think of that route?
It's not necessarily designed for man-to-man, and defensive coaches and defensive players. Whenever you hear the term China, I know you are talking to somebody that's on defense, right? So because we normally don't call China, China on offense, because China to the defense it can be a multitude of concept, but it's usually a corner route and an arrow route and or a short end like a pirate, a short 5-yard end. It could be one of those two. They call both of those concepts China. So the Eagles definitely have that in their game plan.
Mm-hmm.
This past game, let's just talk about this past game that they played against the Giants. They had a couple drags that Jalen Hurts missed. They missed Julio Jones dragging left or right on one of them.
Yep.
There's, and here's the thing, what Greg said is like very, very like important, because if the quarterback doesn't truly understand the protection and he's just going on what the center says, he don't know where they're going to lose to. Because check this out. You're going to lose in the blitz situation because the guys that are rushing are going to be usually a little bit better athletes than the guys that are blocking. So you're going to lose. But it's all about knowing where you're losing at, the point where you are most likely going to break down in protection. And therefore, you know, as a quarterback, I may have an extra step or a count because I'm going to fade away from that in the pocket and deliver this ball to this guy. And I don't think that Jalen Hurts understands that concept because he constantly rolls out to the right most of the time and not understanding where the pressure is coming from in its intent. But when you understand that as a quarterback, you know that, oh, I may have time to throw this outcut. I may have time to throw this, or I can totally check out of the play. And then now I can change the play and do that. But since Jalen doesn't have the autonomy at this point that I'm not seeing, or maybe he does, to change plays, that means that he doesn't know what the hell is going on. That's what I would think.
Well, that sort of, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say there's a number of ways here, and Jay knows all this, and he's right. A lot of teams have what would be considered hot routes. That's not the right term, but routes that are built into route concepts, okay, that are available to be thrown if you get pressure and you feel like as a quarterback that can't be picked up the way you want it to be picked up. You know, I remember having this conversation with Mike March years ago, and he always had routes that were built into his offense where the quarterback could throw the ball. It wasn't a hot route. It was just built into the 5-man route combination. And the other thing is, and this is something that Jalen is not good at, and you know, maybe sometimes quarterbacks that have great running ability are not good at this and never get good at this. Part of defeating pressure is also the ability to stand in there, be tough in the pocket, and deliver the ball with people around you. That's part of beating pressure. Okay, you can see that with the really good quarterbacks that can stand and deliver. Pressure is one of those relative terms. There's a lot of websites that, you know, say pressure. They don't mean anything to me. I have to see those plays, you know, because pressure is very relative. But Jalen is a guy that gets out of there. He gets out of there way too fast. He perceives pressure that is often not really there by NFL standards. And when you perceive pressure and you get out of there, you miss opportunities. Now, every once in a while, he's going to make a phenomenal play because he's capable of that. But you can't do that. You can't disrupt your own offense like that.
Yeah, you know, you saying that, Greg, makes me think about the Green Bay game against Dallas where Jordan Love, I thought, did a great job. He made a couple of throws right before he got hit with such velocity and strength that showed you the value of that.
He's a one-year starter, okay? I don't know if you saw the game, Jay. This is his first year. Now, granted, it's later in the season, but the touchdown he hit to Wicks near the end of the half, he audible to that because he read the zero blitz, first of all. So he audible to it, and he got hit as soon as he threw it, or just pretty much, you know. So,
but he hung in there, Greg, until the end.
He hung. That's my point, Jay, and I think you agree with it.
Yeah,
you know that's part of playing quarterback in this league. You got to hang in there and deliver the football.
Yeah, and I just got a coaching point in that play, and I was not a part of that, but I'm gonna show you how motion affects that play. They brought the guy in motion, and now Gilmore was inside of the guy of Wicks. But what happened is when he brought him in motion, now Gilmore is outside of him and cover zero.
Yeah.
And therefore, he automatically wins the route if it's a perfect throw because he has the leverage. But that was all set up by motion. That if motion doesn't happen, that's no touchdown.
And but the point is that I think we're trying to make is that Love audible to that because he read the zero.
And he understood what he was looking at. And what I'm seeing right now, I don't necessarily know if Jalen understands what he's looking at.
Well, you guys are the segue masters because I was going to ask you, based on some of the discussions we've had on Inside the Birds this week in your shows about, and I don't want to we talk about motion. Clay Harbor made a really good point. It doesn't even have to be Niners style motion, just widening hitches, right? Or what is it when the guy just widens out from maybe a reduced split to say that again?
Away motion, yeah.
Yeah, just like a little bit of movement. He said Tom Brady, when he played for the Patriots, always had just a little bit of a motion involved. It doesn't not orbit, not jet, just move a receiver a couple of feet over to the right. I think he said hitching it, but either way, we don't see that. Is that when you see Martindale and Bulls back to back? And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but Bulls will play zone behind a lot of his blitzes, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's a little bit different usually when you play a blitzing team.
Martindale's more of a man guy. Bulls more of a zone guy. Yeah. They match, but the general principle is zone. Yes. Sure. You have to match because otherwise you can't just let guys run into voids. But it's taught not as a pure man where you got him.
Man is easier to debunk, right? It's easier to recognize. It's easier to get the ball out. It's easier to call a play out. So if you can't do it in man, it's going to be harder for you to do it in zone.
Right. Shift was the word I'm thinking of, not necessarily motion, but just shifting.
Yeah, that was all of those things. All of those things, Geoff, count and matter because it'll make the defense. Because what it does, it triggers their rules. Remember, they have rules to their defense as well. Yep. If I shift and this guy's off the ball, now it could trigger something for them that this play may not be a good play for this particular, offensive set, right? Mm-hmm. There's things that you are doing to them, right? You're on an offensive as well when it comes to shifts and motions.
Right. So here's the Tampa Bay defense that we need to discuss with all this blitzing. They're 9th in sacks. But in some of the other advanced metrics like hurry percentage and pressure percentage, which again can be subjective, but when they all tell you similarly, 18th in this, 21st in that, what it tells you, and Greg watches the tape, so I'm sure he could validate, yes, they blitz a lot, but they're not necessarily always putting quarterbacks in great, tremendous conflict because the data shows that it's not like they have a top 5 defense. In fact, opponents have a 92 passer rating against Tampa Bay, which is 22nd in the league. So
and I think some of that is a function of they've had a ton of injuries all season long. So they've not played with a lot of corners who they don't want to be playing with. Right. And now they're back with Davis and Dean. Everybody's healthy for them on the back end.
Right. So what can the Eagles do, Jason, today? I mean, if it's not going to be shifts in motion, hurry up. That always is good against a team that likes to blitz a lot, tempo, RPOs. What do you think is going to happen today? If you're in that building, you got to think that they're not just going to run the same game plan for the last 5 or 6 weeks and expect, this will be the week where everybody puts it together. Oh gosh.
What? Well, maybe it's
a loaded question.
Yeah, maybe they're in a playoff. I just don't see how. Unless you're ripping the offense out of whoever's hands it is that is calling the plays, I think let's just think. The play callers and the players must be frustrated because there's a bunch of the players out, a bunch of language that's pointing toward the players being frustrated. You don't think the coaches are frustrated?
Oh, I'm sure.
Because remember, coaches have a smorgasbord of plays that they wish they can get to. Mm-hmm. They want to get to the backup. Matter of fact, LaFleur got to some stuff that I haven't seen in years this past game. He was able to get to some stuff. His quarterback can do more.
Gotcha.
You know, and that's the truth. Until Jalen puts it, I want Jalen to be successful. I want him to be worth every penny. But until Jalen puts it together and not show that he can be confused easily, run out of the pocket unnecessarily, it's kind of tough for any offensive coordinator to go out there and dial up stuff with confidence. It's just
Jason, one thing I want to follow up with. One person from another team told me watching Eagles tape, Hurts sometimes predetermined that he's going to move. Like it's in his head, I'm going to go.
No question.
Do you guys see that, Jason? Do you see that, Greg? Do you see that?
But that's what Greg and I are talking about. Like we know if he sees multiple people running toward the line of scrimmage, he's getting out of there. It doesn't mean doesn't mean that they're not protected. Just because people are running toward the line of scrimmage doesn't mean that you're unprotected. You know, it all depends on
Right.
what the protection call is, and a lot of times when you look at the end of the play, you're like, oh, why did he move? He didn't have to. It was picked up. So with that being said, I think that this is what you can do: rely on the run game.
All right, so
rely on the run game and try not to turn the ball over. I think you'll have a really good chance of beating this Buccaneers team.
The only issue I see with that, Jason, which is I've heard a lot of that this week. I've even, fans said, just get to what you want to do, is that you may have competing philosophies here, right? The coaches may say this will get us a win against Tampa Bay. I don't think that anybody thinks that you're just going to run your way to victories over either the Lions or the Niners. As you go deeper, you have to figure out your passing offense problems, right? And from a management standpoint, do you really want to see the team win a playoff game? We've heard about the owner not being happy about regular season games where they ran the ball and won. So, and I get it, because they pay all this money to the quarterback and the passing weapons to not have to sit there and grind and run your way to a win, only to set yourself up for failure around later. So I guess with that in mind, if you're the coach, don't you think you go into this game like, I have to get the passing game solved? Running this game and winning 20-3 ain't going to serve me well when I face the Lions or the Niners or whoever in the Super Bowl. I got to be able to throw this ball. And if I don't work on it this game, then when?
Greg, you want to go for it? Adam, you want to go for that? Because my thought is this: is that it's a playoff game. It's one game elimination, right? So if that's the case, I don't give a damn how I get out of there with the win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that illustrates the difference of player versus coach versus management.
But that's the player versus coach. What I'm saying ultimately is that as a coach, you get a chance to live and fight another day if you get a playoff win.
Right.
You do.
So Mike McCarthy is probably about to, be looking for a job here, because you think he would have cared if they ran it or passed it? I don't think he would have cared as long as they won.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so I agree. I hear what you're saying. And, from some of the things Adam and I have talked about on the pod this week, Nick Sirianni right now is under the microscope for trying to figure out the offensive issues. And a big part of that is the passing offense issue. So I agree that winning a game buys him another chance to go try to figure it out the other week from a player standpoint and a coaching standpoint. Does it help him and the franchise overall? Well, that's only a question for the bosses, right? At that point. So that's where I talked about maybe competing interests here at the moment. Greg, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that, I've been doing this a long time and talked to a lot of coaches and studied tape for a lot of years. Almost always, I would say not almost, always, coaches play to the strengths, and they try to maximize the strength of their quarterback and minimize the limitations of the quarterback. That's what the NFL is. It starts with the quarterback. No coach goes into a game, a season, or whatever and says, you know what? I don't want any explosive plays. I don't want any really good plays this week. No coach says that. So I'm not in the building, okay? I know how fans think. I'm not going to address things I don't know, okay? Sure. I don't know what the relationship with Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts is. I don't know how he coaches him, how he doesn't coach him. I can't address that. But if they're not doing things because of the year Jalen Hurts had a year ago and the fact that he had a great Super Bowl game, the automatic assumption is that Brian Johnson is bad. Okay, we don't know any of that stuff. We really don't. I'm just being honest here. But there's no way Brian Johnson, I know it's his first year in the NFL, and the NFL is way different than college. Let's get that out as well. But there's no way he's going into games thinking, I don't really want Jalen Hurts to do great things, so I'm really going to cut back on what I'm doing. There's no way that's happening. So in some ways, we have to accept the fact that some of the things they're not doing are because Brian and maybe Nick by extension, and maybe is there a passing game coordinator as well?
Yes,
Adam?
Kevin Patullo.
Maybe Kevin Patullo. He's involved in all this, I'm sure.
Yep.
Maybe there's a feeling that our quarterback's not ready to handle some of the things we'd like to do. Because if he could, my guess is they'd be doing it.
I would think so too. And you do wonder, is their mindset, then we'll run the ball and that will help us, or that's just buying us another day until we have to throw the ball.
But
That's a great. It's all a great discussion about what happens.
You're just trying to win this game.
Of course.
Hey, if they win this game 3-2, the coaches aren't going to care.
Yeah,
the coaches will not care. Correct.
Right.
And
they get to move on. I mean, look, it's not even without AJ Brown. There's enough there. We'll get to later what the Bucs do against tight ends. They don't cover them very well. There's going to be some opportunities tonight. This is not a great defense. It's a good defense. They're healthy, which has been a problem for them. But there'll be some opportunities here. But you guys just outlined, Hurts has got to hang in there. Coach has got to help him out a little bit. They don't get the backs don't get anything of the run game. Gainwell, is going to be in there for third down because he blocks better. We've known that all season.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's got to happen, Geoff, tonight is what the opportunities are there that you have to seize them. It starts with the quarterback. Everybody's got to help everybody out here because you're down your best player in offense, not the quarterback. It's actually AJ Brown is a phenomenal football player.
Yep.
As someone from another team said to us, when you go up against man coverage, you want him on the field because he wins. Who's going to win against man coverage tonight when they play man coverage?
Well, I think that's a big question.
Devontae Smith.
He might be the only one.
Yeah. Devontae Smith can win, and if it's man, the Eagles don't do a good job of screening at all.
Terrible.
Which is a good blitz
don't
beater.
do a good job. Like they just don't do a good job of screening at all. And this is a good game to get some rub screens for running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the types of things that can happen, but we don't do a great job at it.
Nope, they've not been a good screen team. One thing they have been doing lately, and that's partly personnel and partly, I would imagine, opponent, is getting into 12 personnel more. We saw them do that against the Giants, specifically because Wink Martindale likes to blitz. We know 12 personnel is a good choice of personnel against a blitzing team. And Greg, I would imagine today with AJ Brown out and against a team that likes to blitz, and with how the offense needs to function, that you'll probably see a decent amount of 12 personnel today. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. And that'll, depending on down and distance, that'll get the Bucs in their base front, which is a 5-2. And then, you certainly can throw against that as well if you choose to. But, I know they ran the ball really well when they played the Bucs week 3, and people are assuming that that's what they should do. But the Bucs overall this season have been very, very good against the run. So it's not an automatic that you just line up tonight and run the ball, because the Bucs have really been good against the run.
What's interesting in that first game? Yeah, the Eagles ran the heck out of for over 200 yards. The Eagles still put the ball up 37 times. So it's not like they didn't throw it. And they had a bunch of big plays.
They controlled that game. They controlled that game.
They had the ball for almost 40 minutes. It was just an interesting game because they did everything they kind of wanted in that game. And they took advantage of the matchups and some injuries. But things have changed here. Now, almost 4 months later, it's interesting how things have changed for both football teams.
Yeah, Adam, I'm glad you bring that up because even the Bucs defense that Greg mentioned, if you looked at their stats, metrics and things, maybe 9 or 10 weeks ago, you would say they're not very good. They did have injuries. Even in the first game, Kalijah Cansey didn't play against the Eagles. But since week 12, the Bucs have allowed the 6th fewest points in the NFL. That they are top 10 in touchdowns allowed. They are the 4th best team on third down at 32.2%. And the passer rating against them, 84.5, which is it's top 12, but it's much better than the 90-something that I had mentioned that they were for the entire season. So you can start to see this defense is coming together over the latter third of their season, so that even if their blitzes aren't necessarily resulting in sacks, they are starting to create pressures. They have a young player, Greg, I want you to talk about, a linebacker. I would not have gone into this year thinking Joel Tryon Shoyinka was going to lose snaps to a rookie, but Tell us about him.
Yeah, well, I did him coming. I'm pulling up my notes. I did him coming out, and I really, really liked him. He came out of Louisville. He's a athletic kid. Really, he's got light, almost ballet-like feet. I mean, I really, really liked him. He's a loose athlete. He's got live, active feet. He can play multiple positions. He's got really good length. He's over 6'3". His arms are really long. For a guy who's 6'4", 260, he ran a 4.51. Wow. He's really an athletic kid. Great quickness. So, I mean, he's a loose hip guy, easy change of direction. He can rush the quarterback. I really like this kid. So I was not surprised at all to see him start to get more snaps.
Yeah, he's come on late with those six sacks, and it's definitely correlating to them being able to rush the passer and get off the field on third down. You add that with a healthy Barrett back there. I think that they're forming their once very strong defensive line with that young kid there.
Yeah, and you add Kalijah Cansey, who I believe has come back and played nicely since he had the calf injury.
He plays deep tackle almost like a running back. And of course, when they're in their base front, it's more of a four technique, but he has such incredible quickness. I mean, he looks like he almost moves like a running back, like I said.
Greg, that's how people used to describe his teammate Vita Vea. So you got two guys.
Yeah, but Vita Vea is 350 pounds.
He's there, and he's in there for one reason only: to stop the run and pick people off from pass rushes.
Now, does Diaby line up predominantly over the left tackle, or does he move around? How does that work with him?
He'll move around a little bit. He predominantly plays outside for them. He's predominantly an outside player. But in college, he played inside at times as well. I mean, he's 260 plus pounds, so he can do that. Right.
And how much line movement do you see from the Buccaneers? Are we going to see a lot of twists and stunts? Because the Eagles seem to struggle with that also, along with the other blitzes against Martindale last week.
Well, the one thing they do really, really well, and this is going to be an issue, potentially an issue. Okay, I don't want to say it is because we don't know. But the way they use Devin White, who's a known blitzer, he's a major blitzer in what they do. They often use him as part of stunts. Even though he's coming from the second level, he'll essentially be a looper in a stunt game. So he'll work off a defensive lineman who's the picker or the penetrator, and he'll be the looper. And, he's coming with speed. So it's that's something that they've done really well over the last couple of years with Todd Bowles, and you have to really be aware of that.
Yeah. The other thing we have to stop with their defense is when they put both of those linebackers in the A gaps.
Yep.
And it's a problem for us, right? To either double A blitz, but they can get out of it and play cover 4 or cover 2 from it.
Yep.
Because those guys can run and still get back into their passing lanes pretty efficiently. So I know we're going to see it. We've seen it every time we played them. So I want to see how the Eagles respond to it this time.
And the really important thing about that, to play off Jay's point, is that dictates protection 99.9% of the time. That means the back will step inside because the center would be responsible for one of the double A gap muggers and the back would be responsible for the other. So even if they drop out, if it's Gainwell, let's say, if it's third down and it's Gainwell, that takes him out as a primary route runner because he's got to step inside initially and then he releases late. So he predominantly becomes a check down guy as opposed to a primary route runner.
And we're talking about Jalen Hurts being a little bit antsy. When you get a double A gap rusher, it appears that one of those guys are going to pop through right away. Because that's what it looks like when you're right in front of when you're right behind the center, because the running back has to step up first so he avoids you and then goes to his responsibility. So that blitz could cause a lot of problems for us based on what Jalen Hurts has shown.
Yeah, and then it becomes multifaceted, Adam, right? Because when the Eagles like to face a team that's going to blitz and come up the middle, they want their best pass protection crew in there. And that often means, I think you just mentioned it, Kenneth Gainwell, right, over DeAndre Swift. So here's the crowd saying, let's run the ball, let's get DeAndre going. But when they face these teams, Adam, don't they typically go more with Gainwell?
Yeah, in fact, that's what Vance said another team did on the Eagles. He said, it's almost clockwork. You'll rarely see Swift on third down anymore. Or obvious pass situations because they have such a reliance and a confidence that Gainwell can handle the blitz. For a little guy, he's pretty violent. I mean, he's a pretty good pass protector. Also IDs blitzers very well. He does a really good job. If Swift doesn't use his size, not that he's a big guy, but he's maybe bigger frame than Gainwell. The bottom line is, they're going to have to handle the blitz well. For some reason, since the Niners game, Eagles have not handled cover 0 well. I don't know what the heck the problem is. It's been very consistent, to be frank. I'm interested to see what Todd Bowles, Greg talked about it. He finds space. So we'll see what that spacing is like tonight.
Definitely. One more thing to highlight. We talk a lot about the Bucs front end, but we need to talk a little bit about the back end. And in order to do that, I'm sorry, Jason, I have to do this. I have to take a little walk down memory lane. About 13 years ago, the Eagles lost an infamous Tuesday night regular season game because of a snowstorm, much like the Bills game going on. Now, that loss against the Vikings became known as the Joe Webb game. But anybody who played in it or watched it and knows anything about football knows that should have been called the Antoine Winfield game. He had 2 sacks, 9 tackles, a 45-yard fumble return for a touchdown. And now 13 years later, Jay, the son of Antoine Winfield Jr., he appears to be the epicenter, and I'll let you guys talk about it, but he's a big part of what they do defensively, because Antoine Winfield Jr. is a very good safety. He just made All-Pro in, I think, his 3rd or 4th year, even though somehow he didn't make Pro Bowl. But when you watch Antoine Winfield on tape, what do you see?
Well, if you're asking me, I like, here's the thing. I like defensive players more than I like offensive players. Because I play the game with a defensive mind. That every coach always will tell you that I've always played the game with a defensive mind. Because I like to hit people, and I know that the game is physical. And so Antoine Winfield Sr. was one of my all-time favorite players that ever played this game.
Whoa, you're talking about an Ohio State guy here.
Yeah, Jay. It's just I respect the way that certain people approach the game of football. You respect it. When you see it, you appreciate that. And so Antoine Winfield Jr. plays the game the right way. And that's just born and bred. He saw his dad doing it. I'm pretty sure his dad had a lot to say. If you're going to play this game with toughness and physicality, we're going to go toward the smoke and we're not going to run from it. That's the way he plays it. And you can tell that's the way that he plays it, because you don't mix it up with offensive linemen the way that he's willing to mix it up with offensive linemen, unless you love contact and you love this game. And I think that it's a clear indication that this kid loves the game.
Greg, how are they going to use Antoine Winfield tonight? How are they not going to use Antoine?
He's used in multiple ways. You've got to know where he is. As I said, he's a tremendous blitzer. And one thing he does really well is, to use the expression that's often used, is he holds his water really well. So when he blitzes, you don't, he's not creeping up there and you're standing close to the line of scrimmage where he's a blitzer. He does a really, really good job of blitzing from meaningful distance. Obviously, you can't come from, 15, 18, 20 yards. That's too far. But he does a really good job of sort of walking that balance between, hey, you're not sure if he's coming, but when he comes, he's close enough and he comes with speed. He's got downhill explosiveness. But he's a guy that can play in the box. He can blitz. He can play on the back end. He makes interceptions. I mean, to me, he's one of the 2 or 3 best safeties in the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jay, when you see Winfield, is it more, okay, he's with the perfect scheme for his talent? Or is it, hey, this kid's really special? What are your thoughts on that?
No, he can play anywhere.
Yeah,
any team would love to have a guy like Antoine Winfield. He catches picks. He goes and gets the picks. It's not just like he catches tip interceptions. He makes plays on the football, and he has a knack for dislodging the football. Those are things that translate to any defense. He'll be a starter on any team in this league.
Great. Good stuff. By the way, to both of your guys' points on his playmaking ability, he leads all NFL safeties with 6 sacks, and he leads the NFL with 6 forced fumbles. He has 8 quarterback hits, and he had 122 tackles. And as for tonight, we have a great intern named Sam Finkel who does analytics and goes deep into the numbers. He went back to week 3 and charted Winfield snaps. So Winfield lined up as the deep safety on 45 of 80 snaps, which is a little more than half the time, but he played 25 of those 80, which is about a third of the snaps inside the box, and 10% of his snaps in slot coverage. So what that shows you, as you guys mentioned, is this guy's a Swiss Army knife. He can play anywhere, and he racks up good stats from wherever he is. Obviously the Eagles will have to have that red circle around him tonight to know where he is and what he's capable of doing. All right, that wraps up our first hour of Inside the Birds pregame live. We're going to pause a moment to hear from our friends at Sky Motorcars and the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Sky Motorcars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motorcars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motorcars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorcars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, we're back on Inside the Birds pregame live. We're going to shift in to more talk of the Eagles' defense against this Tampa Bay offense in a second. First, I just wanted to finish off with this. We talked about the middle of the field against a team that blitzes a lot, getting Dallas Goedert, who had 5 catches for 41 yards in the first one. But tight ends in general, Adam, have fared well against the Bucs. What can you tell us about that data there, about tight ends against the Bucs this year?
It's weird. They're the worst defense since week 7 versus opposing tight ends. Juwan Johnson, the Saints, 8 for 90 and a touchdown in week 17. Evan Ingram the week before, 10 for 95 from the Jaguars. The week before that, Tucker Kraft, rookie tight end, 4 for 57 and a touchdown. George Kittle burned him, 8 for 89 and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz had the best game of any tight end for the Texans, 10 for 130 and a touchdown in week 9. And Dalton Kincaid, 5 for 65 and a touchdown. Falcons tight ends, 6 for 74. It is interesting that the middle of the field and running after the catch has been good. And that brings up what I mentioned earlier in the show. 88 Goddard, okay? He had not a great game week 1, but he was targeted a decent amount, 7 times, 5 for 41. Without A.J. Brown, Jeff, somebody's got to raise their game here. This is a veteran. Goddard's been hurt this season. Everybody knows how talented he is. About time this season he played up to the talent when they need him to. This is a huge game for him. They need someone else here. Devontae Smith can't do it alone. This is the guy who should be able to get it done tonight.
Glad you point that out. And, listen, I'm not the expert that Jason and Greg are. Watch the tape. But I thought last week against the Giants, without A.J. Brown, that, I don't know, looked to me like Dallas Goedert didn't do maybe the best job of trying to win his one-on-ones. Maybe he's, I know he's not like a Travis Kelce route runner, Greg, but I'm there was something about the way he was in his stems that didn't excite me when I watch other receivers or tight ends get out of their breaks. I just didn't see it there. Maybe it was just a rough game for him. But did you see that, Jay, Greg? Anything on Goddard?
I know Jay has stronger feelings about it than I do, so I'll let him go.
Okay,
well,
Jay.
Well, Dallas is not a great route running tight end. Right. He's a very athletic and fast tight end for his size, but he doesn't have the nuance in order to shake free. There's some guys that actually run extremely good routes. Sam Laporta is extremely good route runner for a tight end. Ferguson for the Cowboys is a really good route runner for a tight end. Travis Kelce, really good route runner. Kittle has size and speed and route running ability. There's guys that can do it all. I think Goddard's game hasn't progressed in the sense that he uses nuance in order to get open, and he struggles when there's guys that can run with him that he can't necessarily overpower. So he'll struggle in those areas. So depending on him as a number 1 target versus man-to-man, it can work if he's bigger than the guy and faster than the guy, but consistently it's going to be tough. I want to point out something last night. When the game was on the line for Detroit, what did they do? They lined up Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, 1-on-1 with no motion, and said win on something that's traditional, a stop route. We call it search. You just turn opposite of the defensive back's leverage, right? That's what they ran. They chose to run that. And that's what you do when you pay guys money. We've paid Dallas Goedert. We paid A.J. Brown. We paid these guys. That's what you do when you pay people. You don't need all of this. Motion is great. It's a help. It's a tool. It's great. But when you pay guys, you expect them to win one-on-one matchups. And Dallas Goedert has to do that. And here's another thing, too. This is my last point. I'll let Greg get in there.
Sure.
The tight end is the most affected when the quarterback doesn't play well. The position that's affected the most when it comes to targets is the tight end. You know why? Because if you're afraid if you're not seeing the field correctly, you're going to avoid the middle of the field at all costs. You're going to throw individual routes outside.
Yeah. I know that there are some metrics out there that show that the Eagles have not exploited the middle of the field this year the way they did last year.
No, it's because he's not seeing it. Jalen's not seeing it. So even if Dallas Goedert plays a great game, if Jalen is not seeing it, he's not going to have a great game.
Yeah. Greg, anything to add on Goddard there?
No, I mean, I agree with Jay. I mean, Goddard is a big guy who runs really, really well. He can run away from man coverage, but I wouldn't say that he's a great route runner.
Right.
But there's no question, look, this is a team. The Bucs play predominance the word I'd use, because it's probably higher percentage, but it's not extremely high percentage. They play more single high than they do two shell. But like I said, it's not a huge difference. It's not as if they're going to play 80% single high. So there's going to be some man coverage. There's going to be some, cover three. And then, zones are more about the route concepts as opposed to winning, particularly on the inside, because on the inside, you're not getting matched up. It's receivers on the outside, even in cover three, who essentially are working man to man for all intents and purposes. But if you're working between the numbers against cover three, you're not running routes to win against a man per se. Then it becomes the concept of the routes. But yeah, I mean, I like Goddard a lot, and I think he could probably be doing more in this offense, but I agree with Jay. Then your quarterback has to make those throws in the middle of the field. And, we haven't seen Jalen Hurts be really comfortable with that unless he's throwing those slants to Brown, between the numbers, which obviously are not going to happen tonight.
Right. Yeah. But Greg, if they get the ball up, because if they get the ball to Goddard on first down, it'll be a great opportunity for Dallas to make some yards. Because now, first down, they're going to be a high percentage cover three team on first down, and therefore you can get into the seams, either crossing the field into the seam or up the field in the seam.
There you go. All right. Amazingly, all this negativity. The Eagles are actually 3-point favorites tonight at Raymond James Stadium per our friends at mybookie.ag. It's
sorry if we're coming across as negative, Greg.
No.
Or Jeff. I'm sorry.
Listen, we got it. We got a 1-5 in the last 6 games. We're not going to sit here and sing
Kumbaya. Exactly.
Right? Yeah. But they are 3-point favorites. The over-under is 43, a little bit lower than we're normal to. We're trying to figure out. I have tried to figure out what makes the Eagles favorite. It feels like a reputation line, especially since it's a road game. But hey, we do all think that the Eagles have the better overall team. Maybe not better overall defense, but 53-53. That doesn't always matter, though, Adam.
Yeah. Look, to me, it's about where you're at, how you're playing, how you're executing. Baker Mayfield's beat up. That does worry me a little bit if you're a Bucs fan, but the team that's not playing well right now, that's the Eagles. It's not just one side of the football. As we continue to say, when special teams are the best part of the team, that's never a good thing. These guys are getting paid a lot of money on offense. They're not playing well enough. Defense is an absolute joke right now. They can't stop anybody. Right. Mike Evans has got to feel great tonight based on the way that the Eagles have been playing defense. Yeah, we should mention Slay's back tonight. That's big. That's a great matchup. I just don't see how in the world the Bucs are not a favorite here. Well, we'll see if the lines makers are pretty damn good at what they do. They're usually right. But I think it's too much on reputation. Eagles are a reputation team. And they were about a 6-point favorite, I think, in the first matchup. And hey, they took care of business. They crushed them. But man, it's like they're a completely different team right now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the odds makers are wondering where it all went wrong last night in Dallas as well. Sometimes that happens.
That's right. They were 7-point favorite. Good call.
Speaking of Dallas and other teams around the league, let's get into our Around the NFL segment sponsored by Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer. Imagine that. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Adam, it's going to be a week for a lot of head coaching interviews, some GM interviews going on. It's already started. What can you tell us about Brian Johnson, who has had his name out there as far as interviews, and anybody else in the Eagles coaching staff or front office?
Yeah, this is interesting. So I wrote for ProFootballNetwork.com today that David Tepper, the Panthers owner, has this infatuation with the Eagles and just about the way they do things. He likes the way that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie run the football team. And so they already have a guy in analytics named they had a guy that's been there for many, many years. Taylor Rajak is his name. Okay. He came from the Eagles many years ago. So yeah, he's the one guy, but they put an interview request in for Alec Hallaby, who's the Eagles assistant GM, to interview for their GM job. Alec is not a really personnel guy. He's, an analytics guy who's very smart. But Tepper wants to talk to him. And then Brian Johnson, they submitted that last week, and Hallaby last week, potentially others. And this is interesting. And I'm also told that Tepper is very close to Jeffrey Lurie. So it's one of his closest friends in terms of ownership. Look, and we reported this back in the spring. Had Brian Johnson not been promoted as offense coordinator, the Panthers had they probably would have interviewed him to be their offensive coordinator, but things changed. And we'll see what happens with Brian Johnson, the offense going forward here. Lots of rumors of what may or may not happen. But the bottom line is David Tepper really likes the way the Eagles do business. And look, we could say what we want about this team underachieving, but they just got the Super Bowl last season. They won a Super Bowl in 2017. And I think Jeffrey Lloyd, since he became owner in 1994, has been in the playoffs something like 20 out of 30 years, something like that.
Now, is Patrick Stewart still with the Carolina Panthers front office as well?
No.
Okay, he's not there.
Yeah, he went back to New England.
Gotcha. Okay.
He left a year ago, but look, again, the Tepper season. We could argue that what the Eagles do right and wrong, but the fact is other organizations think they're doing a good job.
That's the Rooney Rule. There's no way that they're looking at Brian Johnson.
They actually are.
They were last year, Jay. They were.
No, they put it in. No, in fact, they've got 3 or 4 minority candidates on their radar for.
Oh my God!
So it's not just Rooney Rule. Look, we could argue whether Brian Johnson's doing a good job or not, but other teams like this guy, this owner has this infatuation with Eagles for some reason.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, you would think this owner might be hoping that Nick Sirianni gets unemployed, because if there's a match of hotheads, it would be David Tepper, who's throwing drink on fans, and Nick Sirianni, who's basically walking off the Kansas City field telling the fans to shove it. Right, yeah. Which, by the way, has not gone unnoticed by other people around the league and other people within the Eagles, that Nick Sirianni's emotions tend to run very high. And when you compare that to other head coaches and how they present themselves, it's a little bit of a difference. And again, that's for more discussion down the road. But Nick Sirianni is certainly, you see David Tepper throw a drink on a fan. What is that? What's the first thing you think of, right? So kind of crazy there. With that situation, we will see what happens. Obviously, a lot of interviews left to go. Obviously, the big name Bill Belichick still out there, and Jim Harbaugh. So we'll see the landing spots for them as well.
Back at Michigan.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen, Jay. I know you'd love to see.
Neither do I.
So I'm told by people around the league that when you have to replace your head coach or your GM, it really stinks. You know what also stinks? Trying to find good tickets online. That's why you need GameTime, the fast, easy way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, theater shows near you. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, and right now on the GameTime app, you are just 2 taps away from tickets to see any of the local sports teams, any concerts, any comedy shows, and more. No jokes about the Eagles on a comedy show, please. All right, the best part is GameTime offers event cancellation protection and job loss protection. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They're all in prices, show you the total up front, and you can see the view from your seat. I love that part about it. You know exactly what to expect when you get to checkout. GameTime's obsessed with helping you save money. They've got zone deals that let you pick the section while GameTime picks the seats for the best savings. And then there's the GameTime guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime credits you 110% of the difference. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we talk about this Eagles defense now. I kind of joke that it's becoming the Benjamin Button of the NFL. It's not getting any younger as the season goes on, but it's surely playing coverages as if it's the first time that they've ever had to do it. So we've talked a lot about communication issues, pass rush issues, talent and coaching issues. Let's try to focus here on not the why, not the what. All right, we already know what we see is not happening. Greg, you made a point. You watched tape and you talked about the awareness, what people are seeing on the back end. And I think you guys used the Reed Blankenship getting lost on Darius Slayton as an example. He catches the ball at the 2-yard line, sets up a touchdown.
I think that might have been Robinson. That might have been Robinson.
Yeah, you're right. It was Robinson. My fault on that. As just an example of how players who you've seen in the past routinely make a play that you expect them to make are just not in position to make.
Yeah, and that's why I always struggle with the idea that that it's coaching. I mean, I never know the balance there between that. But I mean, I guarantee certain things are coached. all coaches coach certain things, but the play you're talking about was the Robinson 26-yarder on 3rd and 11 in the second quarter. And that came on a flood concept to the field out of a 3-by-1 set. And it was a play where the Eagles rushed 5, and Robinson ran the intermediate out route. Now, Jay probably remembers this. There was a Zin motion. He motioned to basically a stack right behind whatever receiver that was. I can't remember. And so it was a reduced split. And both guys' vertical route ran right essentially at Blankenship. He was the hook defender to the flood side, but he had eyes on the quarterback and he had no awareness of the routes. And he's a guy you expect to play, with really good awareness. It happened the first time they played the Giants too, on the long touchdown to Slayton, when his eyes, for whatever reason, as a deep defender, were in the backfield. And again, I don't mean to pick on Blankenship. He's not the only one, but guys are just not playing with any awareness, which, you would expect this late in the season. It's one thing not to be the most talented guy out there. Okay. That has nothing to do with anything. There's a lot of guys who are not the highest level in terms of physical and athletic traits, and they're really, really good football players. But this team is just not playing with a whole lot of awareness. Now, I can't speak to the change in what they're being asked to do from Desai to Patricia. That I don't know. But there's a definite hesitation, tentativeness, uncertainty, lack of awareness in a lot of plays on the defensive side of the ball.
Jason, this has been going on really since we've had the change here. Every week they're bad mental mistakes, guys running scot-free for the opponent's offense. At what point are they just overthinking, not sure, hesitant? When you watch tape and you watch the games, are they mentally trying? Are they just not there? Are they not getting what they're being taught?
This is going on way before the change at defense coordinator. This is carryover. This is not something that just happened. I don't get it. I wish I had the answer for you. Just here's the thing about a defensive player, especially secondary player. As a football player that's been playing football for a long time, for you to make it to the pros, there are certain things that don't change about football. When you study tape, you should automatically know, based on the scenario, it's 3rd and 11. This team is going to get beyond the sticks in order to complete this completion. That's just pretty standard. And if they go to a stack, I should already know that there's going to be 2 or 3 things that they can do from that position based on my preparation of watching film. So that's your job. That's what the city, the team is paying you for. So we expect you to do that. Is your job to have some type of awareness and understand your leverage, understanding what their highest chance of a play call is. That's what we're paying you to do. And it just doesn't seem like our guys are prepared for that, and or they just don't know what they're doing in those situations, right? And when I say that is that there's no growth and no development, and I don't necessarily think that that's a coaching situation. If you tell a person, hey, run to the store and bring me back a loaf of bread, and they can't get it right ever, that's the player. The coach told you.
Jeez. Well, yeah.
Like, like the coach told him multiple times, what else do you expect from him? You just got to change out the players at some point. And I think we're at that place where we got to change out the players. I don't know if Greg agrees with that, but I just think based on what I've seen, and I always take a little bit more harsher stance than Greg, but I just think that there's a time where these mistakes are just over and over again to the point that they can't get right.
Right.
Well, I think, let me follow. I think there's no denying that there is a talent issue with the Eagles defense, especially on the back end. Nobody's going to say that this is an all-pro back end, but I would ask you this, Jay, because a lot of times athletes and coaches have told me, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, right? Where if too much is going on inside your head, you don't play naturally. You don't play on instinct, right? You don't play what your body naturally does when you rep something game in, game out, practice in, practice out, when you have a lot going on in your head. So while I agree with both of you that clearly Reed Blankenship is not coached to put his eyes on the quarterback in that situation and lose the sight of the offensive player, I do wonder when I watch this team, because of the switch over and because of the different styles of defense, if so much is going on in guys' heads that they can't play just on instinct, that they're just thinking so much out there.
This is not neither one of these systems that they're running is nuanced. Everybody, including us and the fans, know what the Eagles are going to be in. They don't run a detailed defense. For God's sakes, I watched Michigan win the national championship, and they had complex systems and switching defenses and stunning and dropping people out. We don't do that as a defense. This is as vanilla as you can get. And when you're a vanilla defense, you should at least be assignment pure. And that's what we're saying. This has nothing to do with athletic ability. This has to do with the ability to learn from your mistakes. And these guys are not doing it at all. And it's baffling to me that a guy that is in this league, because not just Reed Blankenship, but a lot of these guys that are playing in this league because of their ability to be good football players and be able to handle information, they're just not doing it. And I don't think, I could be very wrong because of the Desai. Maybe there's some switch over in language and terms, maybe, and that's confusing them. But when it comes to defensive scheme, there's guys that you can put in this game plan right now that can run these coverages better than these guys that's here with us currently. Just because they're so simple. There's nothing complex about what we're doing. And when I say that, I'm not understating it. Greg, am I lying here? There's nothing robust about this game plan that's confusing anybody. If you look at how well teams move the ball on us with ease up and down the field, that'll let you know that they're not doing anything special.
That's fair.
Well,
fair point.
and what I'd say too is then you have to understand the foundation of how a defense is built. Okay. Basically, this is a defense going back to last year. The premise, even though they changed coordinators, the premise of how they were going to be built did not change. It was going to be a defense built on the ability of a really good D-line, 1, to stop the run, and 2, to rush the quarterback. That's without pressure. Now, keep in mind, a 5-man pass rush by 5 defensive linemen is not a blitz. But the point is that they were going to, that was the foundation of this defense. Okay. The back end, they signed 2 corners who were both over 30. So they had to have some sense that they're not likely the same player. What Bradbury put on tape a year ago, as Adam has talked about many times, was not necessarily very good. They know that in the building, but it got camouflaged and compensated for by the fact that the defensive foundation was a pass rush that, by the way, did not feature blitz. Rarely were linebackers involved in their pass rush. So this was the foundation of this defense. It has been that way all through this season. It's very hard to change a foundation in the middle of a season. So what have we seen? An inability to rush the quarterback. They don't really have a lot of places to go right now. They don't have players who can blitz. So they don't really have any place to go. So what they're counting on, and by the way, they're playing an offensive line tonight that, with the exception of the left tackle, is not a high-level O-line. So is it possible that all of a sudden some guys who we think of as good players, who maybe haven't been good players recently, can make some plays tonight? That could happen, by the way, guys. There's no question that could happen. Because other than Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, you're dealing with an O-line that's, the interior is not very good. The right tackle, Gadecki, he's been solid, but he's beatable. So could it happen tonight? Sure, it could happen tonight. And Mayfield is not, and certainly with a bad ankle, Mayfield's not a mover. So you're going to be dealing with a stationary quarterback. So could there be 5 sacks tonight? Sure, there could be. But overall, this defense has been built a certain way, and that way has not produced the same results as were expected.
Well, I would agree. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jeff, you and I talked about Josh Sweat, and Greg and Jason could talk about this. Josh Sweat is dragging the leg. We had one team tell us it looks like he might be wearing a brace. He doesn't look right. So, and he's obviously one of the most important pass rushers. They're not getting the juice up field. They're not making quarterbacks move. I mean, you go back to Kyler Murray at his best games as a pro. He could have read a book back there. I don't know what is going on since really the first. at the end of the first half of the regular season on, the pass rush is disappeared. Is it the change in coordinators? Okay, maybe not. But that's another thing. If you're not going to blitz and you're not getting home, what are you doing to affect the quarterback? That's the next question.
That's 100% the question. And that comes into play tonight as we talk about this game. On third down, the Eagles are going to have to figure out a way to either get the quarterback, and if not, B, defend two of the better third down receivers. Well, two of the better receivers, but especially on third down in the game. That's the tandem of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Evans just had his 10th consecutive 1,000-yard season in 10 years. He finished with 1,255 and 13 touchdowns. That's the second most of his career. And Godwin, who now splits between outside and the slot in first-year coordinator Dave Canales' offense, just had his third straight 1,000-yard season. Godwin's 32 catches on third down are the third most in football, and both are top 10 in third down receiving yards, according to our analytics intern, Sam Finkel. So, Greg, when you look at these two guys, even if the Eagles aren't rolling out the red carpet, these should be tough matchups for, you would think this is going to be pretty tough on the Eagles back end, those two guys.
Yeah, and what'll happen is, and it happened in the last game, which of course goes back to early in the season, is they basically moved Darius Slay to match up to Evans when he lined up outside, beginning, midway through the second quarter. I would expect that'll be the case again tonight. I don't know how much man coverage they'll play. Godwin is a really difficult matchup. And the other thing to keep in mind, even though he's not a high volume target, is Trey Palmer can run. And they use him a lot. They use him a lot to lift coverage and create space. And that's something that you have to be aware of, because the Eagles are not fast on the back end. That's they've kind of gotten old on the back end quick, and they don't have speed on the back end. So, that's something to be aware of, because, like I said, Palmer's not a volume target, but he can. You certainly can throw the ball to him if he gets on top of the defense.
Yeah,
right.
Geoff, you know what's funny? I'm so old. I remember like 4 years ago, we were doing a show with Greg, and Greg goes, "Man, the Eagles are slow on offense. Now they're slow on defense on the back end."
Yeah,
they just got Slay and Avonte Maddox backs. They're faster than they have been most of this year with those two players, because Maddox can run. Slay isn't as fast as it used to be, but it's way better than what we have out there.
Right. So
they're going to go after Bradbury. They're going after Bradbury.
Palmer's the guy who comes in outside, right, and Godwin moves inside.
Yep.
So
they throw screens to Palmer too.
Right.
Okay.
Like they'll throw bubbles and reverses and stuff to Palmer.
I'm just wondering how much, if you'll actually see a Bradbury versus Palmer, because they're using Bradbury now inside more when they go to their sub packages, and they'll put with Slayback.
He won't be on Palmer if they're in man.
Right.
The zone is different, but if they're in man and they want to match up, Bradbury will be on Ott in the tight end.
Yeah. Do they try? Have you seen the Bucs try to maybe come out with 12 or 13, but use Palmer as one of the two receivers on the outside to get that slower corner?
Sure.
So that's what I think the Eagles would have to worry about is, do they try to find times when Bradbury's on the outside in base and then try to get Palmer in their base offense to get them?
Well, the question is, who's the other corner outside with Slay when they go to dime? Because if they bring Bradbury inside, which they will, then who's going to play on the, opposite?
You would think Ringo, right? At this point,
they've been rotating Ringo and Ricks, and I don't think Ricks has done particularly well based on tape. Ringo's been okay, but I think that's a weak spot.
Yeah. Have you guys been able to figure out, because I haven't, but like when they do these alternations between Ringo and Ricks, what the situations
are? Two series.
Right. So it's not down in distance. It's just you get a couple of, okay.
No, they stay in the whole series. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, one reason, I do want to say one thing as we transition this. The one thing I would say maybe that might be in the heads of them, because it's not something that they do or might be more complex, is, and we saw it last week a lot, Josh Sweat had to drop into a coverage and figure out who's the number 2 or the number 3 to one side. And then Hassan Reddick has now been in coverage more so than he has under Sean Desai's system. When you've seen that, has that jumped out at you as saying maybe that's asking a little much of guys who are not used to doing what they're doing?
No, I fully anticipated that, because that's the Belichick Patricia way.
Right, but is that the right way for the personnel is what I'm asking. Like, do you think Josh Sweat
No,
looks
no,
at
no. I agree with you. I don't think that that's optimal use. I thought that Arizona proved that when they were trying to get him to be more of a stand-up guy and not rushing him and those things. And so I don't think that he was his most productive in Arizona, even though he was drafted first. So I think he's better with his hand in the dirt and not thinking too much about the passing game. But again, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Patricia is going to go out and run his defense the way that he's going to run it. So he's going to put him out there in a 5-man front, which is equivalent to a 3-4, and they're going to have those guys dropping coverage sometimes. It's going to happen.
Right.
Is it crazy to me, Greg, that I think that Josh Sweat, like he can't compare Jamie Collins and Josh Sweat. They're not the same type of player. So why would you ask him to do similar things? I get surprised. Reddick, I get. Reddick has played some linebacker. He's faster. He's a little bit more loose hipped in the
They
open
put
field.
Nolan Smith in there for Sweat. They put Nolan Smith in for Josh Sweat and had Nolan Smith do it, and he still got burned. Yeah. It's a tough ask for guys that are not accustomed to doing. You draft guys for that particular style of defense. I don't think the Eagles drafted these guys to do that.
And guys, this is the kind of stuff you would do in OTAs. We were talking to someone who's with another team. We just got an opinion. He goes, listen, this is the kind of, if you're gonna, when you go from a coordinator to coordinator in season, you can, there's only certain things you can do. You can't ask them to do things they're not comfortable with or they haven't done. You got to be careful with that, because this is when guys start complaining to the media behind the scenes about, hey, man, I don't want to do this. Remember, Fletch had issues with some of the things he was asked to do, and he finally accepted it, and that's fine with the 4-eye stuff a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this thing looked so bad defensively. I know they had an extra day. I don't know how much that's going to mean, but I'm so interested to see what Patricia has tonight, because it's been so bad with him as the play caller. You would think it couldn't get any worse, but Baker Mayfield's beat up. Will he be aggressive? Will he just play passively and let Baker stand back there? Greg, you've seen Baker play. What kind of season has he had?
Up and down. I mean, he's one of those guys that when he's hot, he's streaky, and he makes really, really good throws. He's essentially a pocket quarterback. If you can get him to not to be rhythmic, in other words, if you can get him to have to stay in the pocket later in the down, he gets a little frenetic. He starts to get a little jumpy. He doesn't see things with the same clarity, and he'll throw some to you. But you've got to be able to put pressure on him. You've got to get bodies around him. As I said, theoretically, if this was sort of the normal Eagles defense, the way we anticipated it to be, we would look at this matchup and think, man, this O-line cannot hold up against this bunch. That's what we would say.
Yep.
Right. But we don't know that right now. Jalen Carter, don't forget, this defense has played the most snaps in the NFL since week 11. Okay. That is a big factor here. Jalen Carter's played more snaps than he's probably ever played in his life. In the last couple of weeks, it's looked like that. He hasn't been the same player. Jordan Davis hadn't
been right since he chased Josh.
Pregame says it all, Greg.
Yeah, I mean,
Greg, I'll tell you. Okay, so Jeff and I we talked about this on our Friday show, Jeff, or one of our shows last week.
Jordan Davis, Jordan Davis has an issue that I don't know if it's fixable. Is he plays straight up?
Yeah,
and I just
which happens when he gets tired, right? I mean, that's usually when you get tired.
It's not even tired anymore, Jeff. It's actually worse.
Yeah, I mean, that may not be fixable. I don't care how big you are, how straight line. The straight line athleticism is irrelevant. I don't care what people think about his straight line athleticism. He's a defensive tackle. It's not really relevant. Yeah, does it look cool when he runs down Josh Allen and people think, oh my God, that's not really relevant to what he needs to do to play at a high level in this league. He stands straight up. You can weigh 350 and guys will move you.
So what we were saying is, Jeff and I talked to some people from other teams who said that there are too many instances where Carter and Davis are trying to make the big play, the flash play, and then other plays they don't give the same intensity. Now, this could be based on, Greg, you said that they played so many snaps, they're not used to playing this much, and there's no way to quantify it, but the fact of the matter is the numbers are the numbers. The tape is not good enough.
No.
And if you want to know why the Eagles' run defense has not been as good, this is part of it. Remember how great they were against the run. They were the best run defense for the first 6 or 7 weeks, but it's fallen off.
Yeah,
Well,
and to that real
go ahead.
quick, Greg, to this point that Adam brought up on our show a couple of weeks ago, that he said a defensive source had told him that the Eagles are two-gapping more so this year than he recalls them doing under Jonathan Gannon. And that was weird to me because, ever since with Jordan Davis, we know that they two-gap against the run on first down when they're in their base defense. So I consulted someone I know on defense who watches. I had him watch some of the Eagles tape and give me the same, wondered about the same feedback. And he said, when you're watching the Eagles right now, not only are they two-gapping, but they're eventually, when a lineman engages, he said, you got to land on one gap eventually so that your linebacker has a place to go. And he feels, and maybe this is to your point about Carter and Jordan not really with their technique, they're not doing that. They're not landing eventually in a certain gap. And what he's seeing is linebackers running into the backs of the defensive linemen instead of into holes where they can make tackles. And I guess that would make sense given how loose they've been in run defense, especially against the Cardinals, who just, obviously gap and powered their way over them. Did that stand out to you that linebackers were not in good position to make tackles in that game?
Well, again, then it depends, and maybe Jay can speak to this, being in training camps and seeing how it's all taught. But then to me, it depends on how that's all taught. Because very often, if defensive linemen, particularly D tackles, are moved, okay? And they don't have to be moved 5 yards off the ball. But if they're moved a little bit backwards, that puts linebackers in a tough spot, because the last thing you want is your defensive lineman in the lap of your linebackers. Because everybody technically has a gap. Gaps are fluid, though, depending on how the play shapes out. You don't just want to run to a gap if the play goes somewhere else. So gaps are fluid. But when you have someone like Jordan Davis, okay, the size that he is and the supposed strength that he's meant to have, if he's double teamed and one techniques and zero techniques get double teamed in this league, even if he's not going to defeat the double team, he at least has to stalemate the double team. He can't be moved, and he's getting moved. Right. And that is creating guys running into his back because they're going back into him.
And you add this is that you're getting two defensive ends that are getting blocked one-on-one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sort of, we talk about the breakdowns in the back end and the front end, and that's why the Eagles have been the way they've been for 6 weeks on defense. Now, inactives for tonight's game should be out momentarily, and when they are, Adam Caplan will be jumping all over that.
Yep.
We did forget to go to Tropical Storm Caplan.
They are. They actually are out.
All right, cool. What do you got?
Tanner McKee, third quarterback. A.J. Brown. C.D. Brown was not put on IR. Rashad Penny, of course. Blankenship is inactive. That's what we were alluding to earlier. That's why they brought up the two safeties, Tyler Steen and Moro Ojomo. So, folks, tonight it's going to be looks like Tristan McCullum or obviously
Avonte Maddox.
Number 29, Avonte Maddox. I would think Avonte Maddox. That's why they did it. Maybe McCullum backs him up. So if Maddox is starting at free safety, then you're going to see Bradley Roby be the nickel. Where
he
he's
will be
comfortable.
the nickel. Yeah.
So here we go.
It was actually, we talked about this, kind of surprised that they deactivated Bradley Roby for a couple of games down there in December.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I don't know why they did that.
And leaned on their youth and inexperience in those situations. Now, as far as the weather tonight, Tropical Storm Caplan, why don't you tell us, because all week long it's been, there's going to be rain, there's not going to be rain, there's going to be lightning, because that's the weather in Tampa. You never know. You got to check every 10 minutes. So you'll have to again, you just said it. Right now, rain between 8 and 9 p.m., 40%, and then if it's raining, it's good. It looks like it'll stop between 9 and 10. So no wind at all, which is great. You'll be able to throw tonight, folks. Now the question is, the first thing we're going to look at is how's Hurts throwing it with that dislocated right middle finger. That is a big deal.
Wait.
Yeah.
That's a pain tolerance thing. That is not an accuracy thing. It's a pain tolerance thing. You're talking about with somebody with hands that look like this.
How many times have you dislocated your fingers?
I don't. A lot of. I have broken fingers. I have broken.
Yeah, but could you throw the ball? Could you throw the ball?
I don't. What I'm saying is it's the same thing. It's the same thing as far as pain tolerance, because it hurts when you catch it. Hurts when you throw. It's a pain tolerance thing.
But don't you? I mean, I know you're not a quarterback, but don't you have to? When you throw your spiral, the way you spin, is that not Like if you're having pain, even if you can do it without saying ouch, doesn't that impact your motion?
It's not your index finger and it's not your thumb. Those are the two most important things that you need in order to throw a football.
All right, cool. All right, that's good info to have. Let's talk about the other quarterback.
Well in practice, though. He did. We know that.
That's true. That's what we're told. Let's talk about the other quarterback because we were mentioning Baker Mayfield and the year that he's had, and it's actually kind of, you know, all these weeks later, it's amazing to think he was competing for the job with Kyle Trask out in training camp. Now, several months later, the 2018 first overall pick has put together a pretty good season again, paired with the offensive coordinator Dave Canales. If you look at Baker Mayfield's 2023 season and how it compares to some of his other years, including his Rookie of the Year season, he's top 3 in almost every category. Yards per game, passing touchdowns, completion percentage is the best of his career. The second best of his career, interception rate, which I think is big because he was starting to get turnover prone, but this year it's down. Even some of the advanced data. On target throws at 75%, poor throw percentage down to 15%. Those are the best of his career. So, Greg, what is it about what you've seen from the Tampa Bay offense that you think has helped Baker Mayfield succeed?
I think Canales does a pretty good job. He's got a good background. You know, I think he does a really good job with his use of personnel, his use of formations. You know, he moves Evans around. Evans is predominantly their boundary X, but he lines up to trips quite a bit. Number 2, number 3. We've talked about Godwin, how he moves around quite a bit. They've done a really nice job with the tight end. We have not mentioned Cade Otton. He's an important player in their offense. I don't know what his numbers exactly are, and I'm sure he's not a volume target overall in the context of their offense, but he's a really important player, and he's got enough juice that he can be a seam threat. So, you know, I think he's a guy that absolutely needs to be mentioned. The big issue that they have on offense at times is their O-line, quite frankly. It's, you know, it's been up and down, and that's made Baker up and down because at his core, Baker's a pocket quarterback. Is he immobile? No. He may be tonight. We don't know the answer to that with his ankle, but at his core, he's a pocket quarterback, and he wants to play rhythmically and turn the ball loose. And, you know, Evans, I've never understood why Mike Evans, when people talk about great receivers, they don't talk about Mike Evans. The guy's
a Hall of Famer.
The guy's had an unbelievable career. You know, he's 6'4".
I think I had some blasphemy for Mike Evans at one point on this time with me and you, Greg.
But
I apologize.
Did you disparage the man?
And it wasn't blasphemy. It was 2 guys a couple years ago, I think, maybe last year, that we were comparing.
Yeah.
And I think I said something foolish. I can't remember the scenario.
We accept your mea culpa, Jay. Yes. It's all right. You went to Michigan. We expect it.
Oh, wait.
Right, one thing.
We're the champions.
One thing on Baker.
Champions. Respect on their name.
All right.
Okay?
I'll put it.
That's right. They are champs. Greg, one thing on Baker, because he's between 6 and 6'1", are there times he can't see because he's a shorter guy?
I mean, I can't speak to what he sees and what he doesn't see, but I imagine that's the case. You know, all shorter quarterbacks every once in a while, depending on the rush. Yes.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about Baker, though. He's willing to step up in the pocket, and he's comfortable with doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able. You can create different throwing angles and lanes that way. So
he's also, say what you want about Baker. Every once in a while, it gets him in trouble, but he's willing to stand and deliver. He is not afraid to work with people around him and make throws. You know, when the bodies are right around him. He's a naturally tough guy. I mean, so he's not looking to get out of there. Now, every once in a while, like I said, that can get him in trouble. Because actually, Baker has a pretty good arm. You know, I don't think people think about him that way, but Baker's got a pretty good arm. You know, so he can make throws.
Would you say his deep ball accuracy is a little questionable at times, though, even for a guy who has a pretty good arm? Maybe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I haven't studied that one particular.
I didn't know if it jumped out at you.
No.
Yeah, okay. He used to be someone we would talk about who can get stuck in the pocket a little bit. If that first read isn't there and he's in and the pocket's starting to pinch around him, you're saying he'll hang in there, but does his accuracy drop a little bit?
I think analysis helped with that a lot. See, can help with that with schematics of what you do with your route concepts to give him a place to go with the football. So if he feels like the primary or even the secondary is not there, that he still has a place to throw the football.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. Well, that is the task at hand. And again, as you mentioned, Greg, and we know he's dealing with an ankle and rib injuries that have impacted how he plays. So we will see if the Eagles can get up on him a little bit tonight and get him a little rattled. I want to take a moment to thank our great production team of James and Zach. They're back behind the wheels. I hear if you do it 3 times, you'll get it right. They bring Inside the Birds pregame live to you in high definition with new graphics, videos, and more. And we just want to thank James and Zach for all of their behind-the-scenes work to bring this great show to life. Again, if you are interested in bringing your own podcast or show to life and you want to talk to James and Zach about how they can help you, just email us at insidethebirds@gmail.com, and we will pass that along. I just want to finish up on this. The Buccaneers, how would you describe their running game with Rachaad White, Greg? Is it just to kind of keep Baker Mayfield honest? Would you say it's one that the Eagles should be scared of?
A lot of touches.
I would say that early in the season it was very poor, and I think it's gotten better. I mean, is it a huge factor? Like, do you have to think of their run game and go, oh my God, we better stop that or else? But White is a 6'1", 6'2" back. He's 215. He's a very multi-dimensional back now. He's a terrific receiver. He's got some natural power to him. Their run game has improved, and they try to run the ball. They're not just a come out and let's throw it all over the yard kind of team, which you don't want to be with Baker anyway. But their run game has significantly improved over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Jeff, you may have numbers in front of you. I don't have those specific numbers. I'm just going by tape study. It has definitely improved over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, it has. I do know, Greg, to your point on how they use him, he has 64 catches for 549 yards and almost 9 yards per catch. I mean, from a production standpoint, Jason, those are almost Westbrookian reception numbers. That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's among league leaders when it comes to overall touches.
Yep. And I think he's behind McCaffrey and one other running back in receiving.
Yeah, right. So he's at the league leader when it comes to that. So he's very good at out of the backfield catching the ball. They use him as outlets and they get to him a lot. That speaks to actually he's their 3rd leading receiver.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not he doesn't have a large, like a high average yards per carry, but they do it enough in order to keep you at bay. They play a consistent game. And to me, what that speaks to is that their defense kind of keeps them in the game.
Yeah.
And when your defense can kind of keep you in the game, you're able to play more of a balanced game, and they don't want to abandon the run game. That's not going to happen with a defensive coach I don't know if across the league anywhere where you're not going to get enough run touches. So 100%. I think that helped them out.
All right, great stuff. We're going to get into our last segment where we pick our player of the game and we pick the score. First, I want to remind everyone, check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. All right, let's get into our players of the game. We got an interesting mix here of players, teams, and positions. Jason Avant, start with you. Who is going to be the player of the game today?
You know what? I don't know.
You do not look like a man with courage of conviction right now.
I don't know how to call this game. I really don't.
Tough.
We're all with you, bro.
I will say this. I think that the lack of A.J. Brown, there's only one guy that I trust with getting open, and I think that's Devontae Smith, and I think that'll be the player of the game.
Devontae Smith be the player of the game. Maybe a little foreshadowing of where you're going with this game. Greg, who do you think will be the player of the game?
Oh, boy. This was a tough one, Jeff.
Yeah, it was.
And for some reason, I don't know why, and we'll get to it. You know, it's not like, people are hanging on the edge of their seat that I'm going to pick the Eagles, and I have no idea why. But I'm going to pick Haason Reddick with the general thought that, you know what? I think he's their best pass rusher, and I think he can beat the right tackle. I really do. And I think that could be a factor in this game, particularly with Baker Mayfield's ankle probably limiting his movement ability. So I picked Haason Reddick.
All right, Haason Reddick. Certainly has the juice off the edge. Probably he's going to see a lot of Tristan Wirfs, right? Or unless he lines up over right tackle and sees a lot of Gedeke.
He'll see Gedeke.
He'll see Gedeke.
Yeah, he'll see Gedeke. I like that. I think that's a favorable matchup for the Eagles, theoretically.
Right.
Adam, who's going to be the player of the game?
Well, this guy, he dropped a touchdown pass in the first game, also scored. This guy's on a contract tear, It's going to be a Hall of Famer, Mike Evans. I can't wait to see Slay on him, see who wins. Should be a good matchup when they play man coverage. But Mike Evans has had a terrific year. He's got good chemistry with Baker. And boy, it'd be interesting to see what happens if he does leave, where he goes. Maybe the Chiefs will look at him. Who knows?
Oh, man, he could certainly use him.
Yep.
Jay, real quick, when a guy has a game like he had week 3, Monday Night Football against a good Eagles team back then, dropped a touchdown, dropped about 3 other passes. Does that, do you think does that little like motivation for a guy going into the same type of game?
I would bet to say that Mike Evans is a very competitive player.
Yeah, I would think so.
10,000-yard receiver is kind of like the receiving, would definitely, insinuate that, right? So I believe that he'll think about that and want to play well. And I'm pretty sure he probably believes that he cost them that game. So I'm sure there'll be added motivation for him.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I'm going to pick a wide receiver from the Bucs also. But Chris Godwin is my pick for player of the game. I tell you what, I really think this game could get out of control for the Eagles, and that's on 3rd and makeable for the Bucs. Anything 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4 or less, if the Bucs can generate some good first down offense. I think Godwin against whoever they try to match up with him in the slot is going to be a problem for this Eagles defense. So I can see Godwin having one of those 10 or 11 catch efforts against the Eagles. Doesn't really find the end zone a whole lot, but to me, it's about moving the chains on 3rd down so that you can get the ball in the end zone to Mike Evans and Rachaad White and others. So Godwin is my player of the game. Let's get into our picks. Again, Eagles are 3-point favorites per mybookie.ag, total of 43. Greg, you won the regular season. You were 13-4 somehow with all your great picks, I guess. So who is going to win this game and by what?
Like I said, I had no idea why I picked, but I'm picking the Eagles. And I think that did I pick 17-13?
17-14.
17-14. So there's really, based on the way they played, I don't know why I did that, but I just have an odd feeling they're going to win this game.
All right. Well, that would be, I guess, a push and an under there for the Eagles' 17-14 win. Adam, you were next up. You finished the regular season 12-5. Who wins?
I've got it. Eagles 20, Bucs 24.
Eagles 20, Bucs 24. All right. So you may possibly pull yourself into a tie with Greg if the Bucs win this.
Yeah, but Greg makes a good point. To me, the key for the Bucs is Baker Mayfield and that ankle. Now, they're also Todd Bowles confirmed about the ribs. That's also a concern if he gets hit there.
Right.
That's the one thing that could prevent the Bucs from winning, and the Eagles have got to hit him. That is what you got to do. He's got a rib injury, and the tape will probably show you which rib, which area, right or left or center. Be interested to see what they do there.
Is Kyle Trask the backup for this team?
Yep.
Has he had to play at all this year? Like any meaningful snaps?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That could throw a little curveball into this game. All right, Jason, what's the score? Who's going to win?
I have the Detroit score of last night versus the Rams, 24-23 Birds.
Wow.
I think it'll be a close game. I don't know why I'm picking them besides that I don't want to stop the season just yet. But I do think the Eagles have like the tendency to get everybody's hopes up and like this is our year, and then it not look that way next week.
Yes. They do have that. They also have the tendency to just look completely dead and then all of a sudden wake up and beat the Cowboys 44-6 in years past. So we know that.
You never know.
All right, I'll finish this off. I was 8-9. I can't even catch any of you guys.
Wow.
Jason is 11-6. Yeah, I was bad. I kept picking the Eagles over the last month of the season. That was my problem. I'm not going to make that problem tonight. I'm going to pick the Bucs to win 26-23. The only thing I'll say is if somehow Kyle Trask has to make his way into this game, that would be obviously a huge advantage for I think, for the Philadelphia Eagles. But as it stands right now, I got the Bucs winning 26-23. All right, big thanks as always to Garage Beer, HelloFresh, GameTime, PHL Sports Nation, James and Zach, everybody who's followed us all year long. If this is indeed the final Inside the Birds pregame live of the year, we thank all of you, and I want to thank my great panel here, Greg, Jason, of course, my co-host Adam, for such a great season. Make sure you guys check out coverage of today's game afterward, immediately after Inside the Birds postgame live. Myself, Adam, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor, and of course, Andrew DeCecco's coverage on insidethebirds.com. So for Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching another Inside the Birds pregame live. Enjoy the game. Cross your fingers. and buckle up.